Now, recently in the UK, a petition was launched from which the petitioning or the petitioner was asking for a general election. Now, what are the challenges with this? Now, of course, the petitioner in this particular instance is Michael Westhood. His argument is the government has lied and it's time for them to go. However, given the fact that we are in the UK, what are the implications of such a petition, and does it have any locus standi, as it were? Now, I want to delve into this quickly. Firstly, though the petition is noble, because of course it highlights a number of grievances that many of us may have, be it in business, or be it you are trying to access healthcare, or be it the issue around immigration. Whatever the challenge is this the right way? Now, I don't have much criticism on why or why not. I just want to look at why it won't work. So firstly, I'll take you through three reasons. The first reason being, well, you live under a parliamentary democracy. Now, what does that mean? It means that when the election occurs, every general election happens after every 5-year cycle. Now, when that general election happens, you have representatives in government that you put in parliament. Now, it gives them the legal standing to be held responsible through petitioning parliament, of course, but not to dislodge their influence on policy, because they have a legal right to be there. So the only way that particular arrangement as a parliamentary democracy can be shifted is when the Prime Minister himself orders an election to occur. If petitions could simply change governments, I can tell you this: Boris Johnson would be out of power immediately, maybe within a month, or Margaret Thatcher, for example. These things don't work. But also the infamous Brexit. There were a number of afterthoughts after the fact, right? Could someone not just petition government to remove the impact of Brexit by literally calling for another referendum? Not of course. The arguments then were that our parliamentary democracy requires us to go through these processes in order for that legal framework to remain. So that's one. The second aspect, which is more germane to the first, is that when a petition occurs, it merely amplifies the concerns. But that's where it stops. The amplification, of course, can raise these concerns and challenges within society itself, but it does not actually lead to perhaps the outcome that people are looking for. But although these concerns may be genuine and sincere. But what does it mean? I think secondary to my point, it would be, well, you can't require the law to preserve you, but at the same time utilize a petition to reverse that same law. Because in actual fact, what it does is it creates precedents. And that's why petitions only play the function of purely amping or amplifying public discontent. Now, but let's look at the impact. So we're a bit balanced here. What has the petition done? I think the petition has raised the necessary concerns in order to make government aware and actually raise a national conversation about broken promises. Because in actual fact, governments do have this tendency of, when they're going towards an election, making a huge amount of promises. For example, when Labour was running in the first instance, it did promise to not cut taxes. It did promise to uphold a lot of the principles within its manifesto, which, of course, looking at it now, given the rise of tax, those promises have been broken. And also to use the argument that Labour tends to use that, well, we came in with a black hole. Well, the question is, were you not aware when you're actually trying to write your own manifesto? One would anticipate that they had governmental insight by virtue of being the sitting opposition. Well, this is a question for another day. But as we focus on just the petition, will it work? Unfortunately not. The petition itself currently sitting at maybe 2 million people, right? It falls short of maybe the over 7 million people that voted for the Conservatives in the previous election. And also the overwhelming over 9 million people that voted for Labour. So it does not even touch the mark in that regard. So to make it even make sense, one would have to consider that aspect of, algorithm, if you will. Mathematics, if you will. But of course, one can say it's a moot point because, petitions, all they need to do is to fashion a discussion and discourse. I think if it's seen purely from that perspective, then I think we can definitely have a discussion as to what that then can lead to. I think one of the areas or the advantages of this petition is that it's raised the conversation. But will that conversation lead to particular outcomes that will see the shifting sands, as it were, when it comes to a policy framework? I don't think so. Just yesterday, our chancellor was discussing this with business, and she seemed adamant that there are not going to be any changes. Now, these are business leaders, of course. I think it was the head of the CDR convention where she had a discussion in great clarity about why they have done this. And they argue that this is the only time Labour has to do this in order to ensure that they raise the necessary funds to go into public spending and equally allow growth. But at the same time, the oxymoron could be, well, if you want business to create and facilitate growth, they need not to have to pay more when it comes to national insurance tax. Now, these are a multitude of the arguments, but purely focusing on the petition, I think maybe as an overall, as I conclude, is that what it has been able to do is definitely raise a conversation, and a conversation worth having. Is there going to be much impact? I doubt, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. With that, I say thank you so much for joining my channel. See you next time.